We were in a prank wars. I jokingly made him catch me cheating. He didn't take that well. A joke. All this began from a joke. This was how my husband found out that I was having an affair with another man. This was supposed to be my secret to the grave, and I had spilled it, and now I am divorced and suffering the consequences. It wasn't supposed to go like this. We had all just been doing it for laughs and plays. It was just a thing we had liked to do since we were in college. The pranks were our thing, and I didn't mean to cheat on him. I thought it was just going to be something we'll laugh over and move on with our lives. I never expected him to take it that seriously. I need help, Redditors. My husband has actually divorced me over a prank. We had always played pranks since we were in college, and the moments leading to my divorce, the prank wars had gotten a little trickier. My husband had acted out a fake medical emergency on me. Like we had just been eating, and he started coughing and clutching his chest. As we behaved normally, I thought it was a prank and had even been laughing until he had actually dropped to the floor, and I swore his heart had stopped beating for a few minutes. My husband had held his breath for a full 10 minutes. That was when I swung into action. I got scared and had to call an ambulance. Then the son of a bitch got up and acted like everything was normal when the ambulance was already at our doorstep. So there I stood, confused and embarrassed, and explaining that it was all a misunderstanding and the person they had come to treat was actually all right. I got livid at that prank and wanted my husband to pay for doing it, so I decided to serve him with the most shocking prank of his life. I didn't know it was going to happen like this. It was supposed to be just a joke, and my husband didn't take it well. He called me out for what I was. I didn't know he knew. After his fake medical emergency prank, I decided I was going to win the prank war. But ultimately, I put an end to my marriage in retrospect. I jokingly made him catch me cheating with the affair I was having behind his back. I didn't think he was going to find out that it wasn't prank. I didn't know my prank was going to be called out like that. Here's what happened. I had arranged with my affair to meet him at the hotel room, and then I told my husband I had a surprise for him at the same venue. I gave him the spare key to the hotel room and told him the exact time to come. I had also arranged with my affair and told him to come earlier. My plan was for my husband to catch me in a compromising position with my affair, and then I'll jump up and laugh at him and take pictures of the shock on his face at realizing I was cheating on him. And then I'll tell him it was all a prank and we would go home and forget all about it. This was how it was supposed to go. But it went the total opposite way. It went in a completely opposite way that I would never had imagined. My husband got there at the right time and busted open the door, and his face was literally the example of anger. I was on top of my affair, and then I got off after a while and then started laughing according to the script I had planned out in my head. But my husband was not laughing when I showed him the camera in the room and how it was recording his reaction. My husband was not laughing either when I told him it was all a prank. This was when I got scared. My lover stood and went to the bathroom to wear his clothes, and my husband released all his anger on me. He had caught me in my game. This was what he had said as he flung pictures of me with my affair, kissing, holding hands together, and committing adultery. I was just so stunned that I didn't realize when my husband left the hotel and I pursued after him, the realization of what I had done crashing all around me. I had been caught. I really didn't want that to lose my husband. I ran after him immediately and got to the house to find him throwing my things out. I got to my knees and held the hem of his trousers as he dragged me along the floor trying to get rid of me. I loved my husband. I couldn't stand to be divorced from him. I couldn't lose my husband. I cried and pleaded, but it had all fallen on deaf ears. Then my husband did the worst thing ever to get back at me. He decided to finish off our relationship with an extreme prank that added to my misery as I write this. Hello, Redditors. You all can think of me as Tia, and I'm 35 years old. Tia is my mother's middle name and the name I had planned to name my child if I had ever gotten to have one with my ex-husband. But I had ruined my chances of that, and as a result, ruined my chances of happiness. My ex-husband was a key strategist. That was why he was good at the prank wars we played and was a cutthroat businessman. My ex-husband was loaded. I didn't want to lose him. I'll call my ex-husband Theo. Theo was a nickname that I loved calling him, but he hated. Theo's about 38 years old. I had met Theo when I was in college running my one-year master's program on interior and architectural design. This has always been a passion of mine. Theo was the stepbrother of a friend that I had made in college, and we had met when I had escorted said friend to their family gardening. This was where he had played the first prank on me, putting food dye in my drink and handing it to me. He had just wanted to mess with me at the party. I had been so embarrassed when everyone I tried to talk to at the party couldn't meet me in the eye because of my very red tongue and lips. Then I had retaliated, of course. With his stepsister's help, I got his house address, and when he had been sleeping, I had hung toilet paper all over his house. It was the lamest retaliation, but that was how we became friends. This was how we ended too. I just didn't see that we were going to end like this too. My ex-husband did the worst prank revenge on me after finding out I was having an affair behind his back. Anyway, Theo and I got close to each other, pranking each other on occasion, and I found out that he was rounding up his masters where I schooled, and that became easier to see him. Theo was kind, caring, and sweet when he wasn't plotting ways to bring about my embarrassment with his pranks. He had a smart brain that made him money, and he was an idea machine. I fell in love with him before he had even asked me to be his girlfriend. I think I was the one that had made the push before he finally asked me to be his girlfriend. We started dating, and it was all rosy. Theo would take me on trips, do anything to make me happy and smile, and I was loving it. I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him, and I knew that he was going to be the only one for me in my life. We didn't have sex while we were dating. That had been a rule of mine. I didn't want to give off the goods before marriage. I had kept myself and had come so far avoiding all the college temptations and whatnot. I had told him, and he had tried to persuade me once, but after that he stopped persuading me and agreed to my rules. This was how I knew he was the one for me. I guess I should have listened to him back then and given up the goods. Then I would have known what I was dealing with and how to solve the problem. Well, it had landed me in a divorce, hadn't it, lol? Theo and I got married 3 years after dating, and we were married for 6 years. Our wedding day had been lovely, and etched in my memory was the way he had said his vows to forever love me through thick and thin. And he hadn't stuck by those vows. I had a fling, and so it wasn't my fault. Theo was terrible in bed. After our wedding night, when I gave up the goods, which had been weird by the way, I started watching videos to see if that was how it was normally done. Sometimes it didn't even get up and the whole mood would be killed. This was what I had endured for 5 whole years. We couldn't have children as a result of this, and during the first 3-4 years of our marriage, I hadn't complained because he showered me with lavish gifts and attention. He had told me we were going to adopt, and when he had announced it in front of his family, his mom had looked at me like I was an incompetent, not knowing it was her son. This was where the crucifix of our problem began. His family hated me because I couldn't give them a grandchild. Like, it got so bad that his mother had to come to our home to stay with us and started pumping me full of all the pregnancy-inducing herbal tea she could find. She had thought I had been the problem, not knowing it was her son, and Theo refused to say anything in my defense. He had just let his mother poke and prod me to her satisfaction, all in the name of trying to get me with a child. There had been an event that I had almost told it to her face. This evil witch had woken me up before 5 a.m. She was half African and believed in the power of gods and ancestral elements. She had woken me up by 5 in the early morning with a white wrapper around her chest and ordered me to come outside naked so the gods could bathe me in their light as the sun was rising. She hadn't even allowed me to put on clothes, and it was freezing by that time of the year. So there I was, standing in the cold and shivering, waiting for the BS dawn light, and my ex-husband was inside comfortably sleeping. I got a cold the next day because of that, and my ex-husband's mother had the audacity to say it was because the gods didn't accept my spirit. That was why I couldn't get pregnant. Could you imagine such BS, and all the while my ex-husband couldn't even confront his mother to tell her to lay off? I got very livid and confronted Theo about his mother's cruel torture, and he said that he was going to talk to her and tell her I didn't like the measures she was going. He had promised, but what did he go ahead to do? Absolutely nothing. Theo would be at the dining room and we wine having dinner, and his mom would be making derogatory remarks about me. Like I probably did something in my past, and that is why I'm unable to bear children. That it was probably hunting me now, and I needed to go through the measures she put me through so I could get better and be able to have grandchildren. And Theo said nothing. He laughed at what she was saying. I was angry that he wasn't even defending me in front of his mother, or at least suggested we go to the hospital to go see what was wrong and tried to fix it. But I still loved him nevertheless, though. He bought me a gift to apologize when I had told him that I hated what he had done, and he had given me one of the cars from his precious collection. And on the side, we were still playing our little prank games and creating happy moments for ourselves. However, the silliness from his mom didn't stop. I struck out when she brought a girl to my marital home. Apparently, she was the daughter of a friend, and she had just brought her home to see her son. She had brought an unknown girl into my home for dinner, and Theo hadn't said anything then. I left the house for them that night and went out to drink with a few of my friends. This was where I met my affair. He was young and good-looking and had paid for my drinks. I had just exchanged numbers with him. I was not looking to explore or do anything at that moment. In my heart of hearts, I still loved Theo, and I'm sure he was just doing everything he could to please his mom while she was at our house. I got home from the bar to find the girl and Theo's mom gone. He had begged for forgiveness and said he couldn't allow his mom to disrespect him, so he had sent them away. He had done that for me, and I had gone and messed it up like a total moron. We returned back to normal. Theo was the person that had gotten me a job at where I had worked, a furniture company, and I had been their catalog manager. From there, I also pitched my interior designing skill to the clients, and they hire me to bring life to their home. During one of the days I was renovating a client's home, I think this was about 6 months after the whole fiasco with Theo's mother. One of the men that had come to deliver the furniture I had ordered happened to be the young man I had run into at the bar the night I had it up to my neck with Theo's mom. He was there working and bringing in the furniture, and he looked hot. He looked like he could get me in all the right spot, and this was where my second mistake began. I started indulging in the fantasies of getting to know the boy that worked for me. I should have just fired him, out of sight and out of mind. But instead, what do? I text him. I know I'm the most foolish person on earth, and I don't deserve my husband's forgiveness. I really do not know what came over me. Scratch that, the least I can do is admit the truth to myself. I was striking out. After what Theo and his mother did to me, I was hurt and just needed a good strong shoulder to cry on. A shoulder that wasn't my husband's. I deserved the worst place in hell. I made a move and texted the young man. So while my husband was on a business trip, I had gone on a date with the man I had met from the bar. It was so fun and different from what I was used to. I ordered what I wanted, not what my husband wanted, and I paid for the date. The guy was cool, and I loved the way his body was in sync with his surroundings. I was honestly just seeking a genuine friend, and I happened to like the guy. Then I slept with him. Maybe I had done it as a retaliation, but once the Pandora box was opened, it couldn't be closed. He was absolutely good in bed, his tool was well equipped for its purpose, and I was finding ways to hang out with him even more as I couldn't stay away. I lavished him with gifts and money and made sure he was well taken care of. I can't believe I did that for a man that wasn't my husband. It was my first time tasting how good it could be in bed, and I didn't want to stop. I started sneaking out of the house when my ex-husband was around. From work, I would go straight to my affairs place and lay with him, and then go home and lie that work had just been too hectic, so that was why I was coming home late. I thought I could have the best of both worlds and lost my husband in the process. In my head, I had been careful and had thought there was no way Theo would know about it. Don't attack me. I had even thought I could get pregnant from my affair and claim the child as Theo so I could finally give his family what he wanted. I was so certain that I could do it and get away with it, that once I got pregnant, I would leave my affair and then face my marriage and never cheat again in my life. I had been so careful at home, but Theo didn't deserve what I had done. I had been the epitome of guilelessness. I didn't behave like I had anything to hide, so I don't even understand how he had caught me in the act. We had even gone to the hospital together as he had promised. This was where we discovered that the problem had been me. The doctor had said something was wrong with my fallopian tubes, but once I got it corrected, I would be able to have children. So I had no need for my affair again. I had planned the prank with that in my mind, that this was the last time I was going to be cheating behind my husband's back. Then Theo came into the room and everything went opposite. He flung pictures on the bed, and when I saw it, I dashed after him. Theo kicked me out of his house and blocked his line. I know because I had tried calling for days. I had even asked his stepsister if there was any way I could reach him, but she had treated me like I had scalds all over my body and my brain popping out of my head. She didn't like me very much. I was determined to make it right. But when I saw the divorce papers at my office 2 weeks after Theo caught me cheating, I had been devastated. I didn't sign it though. I was desperate to make Theo forgive me, so I had fallen into his trap. He first started with canceling me from my office. My ex-husband knew me well and used it against me. He knew I was vain and liked the thought of making more money. I had gotten a call from my office that had told me of this grand investment opportunity, and the person had sounded so convincing. I put in cash almost immediately. I used 50,000 grand from my company's money. I was out of cash at that moment. I had spent it all on lavishing myself and my lover, so I didn't have any money. I decided to use the company's money. In my head, I had already calculated how much was going to return to me as profit, and then I would give back the company before it was time to balance my accounts. This was how my money had disappeared. Theo had hired people to take the money. How did I know this? Because he told me. But this was way after, when I was at the edges of falling apart from ruin. Anyway, my ex-husband didn't stop at that in getting his revenge. Remember, I had told you all here that I had refused to sign the divorce papers because I didn't want to lose Theo. Well, I eventually signed the divorce papers thanks to my ex-husband's ultimate prank. He staged a car kidnapping with me as the victim. More lie, he hired people to fake kidnap me. When I had boarded the Uber to go to my apartment that my company had given me when I had been kicked out of his house, I became a front watcher to the most extreme prank. At that moment, I had been so scared for my life. I had no idea that it was my husband's doing, and all I thought was how I was going to be killed and left to rot somewhere without my ex-husband ever forgiving me. I swear that was what had been on my mind. I hadn't known there had been someone sitting beside the driver in the front until the driver started driving, and the one at the front seat pointed a gun at me and ordered me to sign some papers. Those had been my divorce papers I had signed, and then they ordered me to give them all the money I had in my checking account. That was about $7,000. My whole life savings. That was what I had given to them before they threw me at the side of the road. It took over a week for me to heal, and I discovered what it was for when my lawyer had called me and asked me when I had signed the divorce papers. This was when I knew my husband's hand was all around it. This was also when it was time to balance accounts at the company, when I realized I had been scammed. I confirmed with my lawyer that I wanted to sue Theo to court, but it had only been because I had been played. But while I was trying to do that, my company slammed me with a lawsuit. I had stolen their money. They booted me out of the apartment and then slammed me with an official sack letter and put a terrible review on my resume. My life had just gone from bad to worse. Long story short, I dropped the lawsuit against my ex-husband because he had told me to. Then he returned the $50,000, and that was how I avoided a lawsuit from my company. My ex-husband had told me not to mess with him after that day, and that was code for don't go after me in court. He could very well bury me in court. He had the money, so I had respected myself and accepted my defeat. He told me he had hired a PI to track my every move once I started acting weird in the house. I didn't know what he meant by that, and he hadn't cared to divulge before he left. I had lost my husband all from some little prank. Well, I had lost my husband because I hadn't been content, believe it or not. I regret what I did, and I had learned my lesson the hard way. Now I was back in my parents' house. The stigma of being a divorcee and not having any work is weighing down on me. I can't even call my friends to hang out with me because they're all busy with work and they'll definitely judge me. My father is refusing to speak to me, and my mother shakes her head every time I walk by her in the house. I regret ever cheating on my husband. If you're out there about making the same mistake as me, I advise you to consider the long-term consequences. Hopefully I get out of this heavy depression weighing down on me.